Police dismissed their concerns as paranoia. Security cameras caught nothing. But these 7 women knew someone was watching. One of them was right. And she has the footage to prove it. The evidence will leave you speechless. Don't miss what happens next. I never thought my own code would be used to hunt women. That's the cruel irony. I built SafeDate to protect them. The notification came at 2 a.m., just another ping in the endless stream of alerts from our monitoring system. But this one was different. This one made my blood run cold. I'm Sarah Chen, co-founder and lead developer of the fastest-growing dating app in North America. And someone was using my matching algorithm to stalk our users. The numbers jumped out at me first, patterns in the data that shouldn't be there, small anomalies that most people would miss. But I built this system from the ground up. I know every line of code, every security feature we implemented to keep our users safe. My hands were shaking as I dug deeper into the logs. 3 women, all targeted within the last month, all matched with profiles that disappeared without a trace. My coffee went cold beside me as I traced the digital breadcrumbs. The attacker knew our system, knew exactly how to manipulate the matching preferences to force connections with specific users. This wasn't some random hacker. This was someone with intimate knowledge of our platform, someone on the inside. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my co-founder. "Still at the office? It's late." I stared at his message. Marcus had been acting strange lately, distant during meetings, working odd hours. But Dave, our other co-founder, he'd been asking a lot of questions about our back-end systems too. Questions he'd never been interested in before. The faces of the targeted women flashed across my screen. Their profiles all followed a pattern: successful, single, living alone, just like me. My office suddenly felt too quiet, too exposed. The windows looked out over the city skyline, but all I could see was my own reflection. And something else. A shadow moving in the doorway behind me. I spun around, nothing, but my heart wouldn't stop pounding. I pulled up the building's security logs. Someone had badged in 10 minutes ago. The system didn't record who. I needed to get out, but I had to finish tracing the exploit first. Lives depended on it. The code blurred as I typed faster, following the trail through layers of encrypted data. There, I found it. A backdoor buried so deep in the system, I almost missed it. And the signature in the code. I knew that style. My hands froze over the keyboard. Heavy footsteps in the hallway now, getting closer. The door handle started to turn, and I finally understood why he'd pushed so hard to add that last-minute feature to the algorithm, why he'd insisted on having direct database access. I reached for my phone, but the screen was already lighting up with his message. "Found you." My mind raced through options. The emergency stairwell was just past the break room if I could make it there. The door opened slowly, deliberately. Dave stepped in, his familiar face twisted into something I didn't recognize. "You should have left it alone, Sarah." His voice was different too, colder. "The algorithm needed testing, real-world data. You understand that, right? We're making it better." I kept my voice steady, buying time as I initiated the emergency database lockdown sequence behind my back. Just 3 more keystrokes. "How many women, Dave? How many before the algorithm was better?" He moved closer, blocking my path to the door. "They're fine, mostly just collecting data points for the greater good." The lockdown confirmation flashed on my screen. In seconds, every law enforcement agency in the country would have access to our logs, to the evidence I'd found. Dave saw the alert reflected in my eyes. His face contorted. He lunged forward, but I was already moving. 3 years of kickboxing classes kicked in. My keyboard caught him in the throat as I launched it upward. He stumbled. I ran. The hallway stretched forever, my heels echoing off empty walls. The stairwell door felt a mile away, behind me, cursing, running footsteps. I slammed through the door, taking the stairs 2 at a time. My phone was already dialing 911, 15 floors down, just 15 floors, but I could hear him above me, getting closer. Floor 12, my lungs were burning. Floor 8, the footsteps were louder. Floor 5, when the stairwell door burst open below me, Marcus charged up, our security team right behind him. Dave's footsteps stopped, then retreated. 20 minutes later, I watched from the lobby as they led him out in handcuffs. The evidence was irrefutable, all of it captured in his own code. The very system he'd tried to exploit had become his prison. The notification system still works, better than ever now, but sometimes, when I'm alone in the office late at night, I check my own reflection in the dark windows just to be sure, because I know better than anyone, technology isn't good or evil. It's the people behind it who make that choice, and I choose to protect them, no matter what it takes. I never thought my dream job would become my worst nightmare. Back then, showing multi-million-dollar homes to wealthy clients was everything I'd worked for. The granite countertops, the infinity pools, the smart home systems that could predict your every need. I loved knowing every inch of these properties, every hidden panel, every backup generator, every secret entrance designed for staff to move invisibly through the house. That knowledge saved my life the night Thomas Crawford came back. I'd been in real estate for 7 years, built my reputation on discretion and attention to detail. My specialty was those hidden features that ultra-wealthy clients craved: panic rooms concealed behind bookcases, private elevators masked as powder rooms, underground tunnels connecting guest houses to main residences, the kind of secrets worth killing to protect. I first met him 6 months ago at an open house in Beverly Hills. He seemed perfect, successful tech entrepreneur, quiet, professional, asking all the right questions about security systems and privacy features. I should have noticed how his eyes lingered too long on the service entrances, how he always insisted on testing the backup power systems, always wanted to know about staff access points and camera blind spots. I showed him 17 properties over 2 months. He never made an offer, just kept requesting more viewings, always in the evening, always alone. Each time he'd spend hours examining every inch of these mansions, taking photos, making notes. I thought he was just being thorough. The emails started after I told him I couldn't work with him anymore. Pictures of me entering other properties with clients, screenshots of my calendar, showing appointments I'd never made public, messages about the hidden doors and escape routes in each house I was showing that week. He knew about features that weren't even in the listings, details only someone who'd studied these homes intimately would know. My boss said I was being paranoid. The police said they couldn't do anything without proof of an actual threat. Then my clients started canceling. One found all their home security cameras disabled during a showing. Another had their backup generator mysteriously fail during a power outage, trapping them in their garage. Each time. I knew he was sending me a message, showing me he could get to anyone, anywhere. The Blackwood estate was when I realized how dangerous he truly was. My clients, a tech CEO and his wife, were touring the wine cellar when the power went out. Standard procedure was to wait for the backup generator, but I remembered Thomas's obsession with power systems. I got them out through the kitchen service entrance instead. We were barely in the car when the generator exploded. Fire investigators found signs of tampering, but no prints, no evidence, just like always. That's when I started fighting back, using what I knew about these homes against him. I mapped out every property, every blind spot, every weakness he might exploit. I changed showing times last minute, added fake appointments to throw him off, hired private security to sweep properties before showings. But he was always one step ahead, like he could read my mind, like he knew these houses better than I did now. The Richardson place was next, $12 million smart home with military-grade security. I thought it was finally safe, until my clients got locked in the panic room. The override codes didn't work. The ventilation system started pumping in something that made their eyes burn. If I hadn't known about the maintenance tunnel behind the wood panels, if I hadn't memorized the manual override sequence, they would have died in there. Tonight was supposed to be my last showing. The Morrison estate, old money, old secrets, the kind of place where even the servants had servants, where walls had ears and eyes and centuries of hidden passages. The power went out halfway through the tour. My clients headed to the basement to check the generator, exactly as he planned. I heard the click of the security locks engaging, trapping them down there. But he didn't know about the service elevator. Hidden behind the wine cellar, a remnant from the property's days as a Prohibition-era mansion. I got them out through the old tunnel system while he was still trying to override the main security panel. I could hear him cursing through the walls as we escaped. his footsteps echoing through passages he thought only he knew about. I can hear police sirens now, getting closer, but I know they won't find him. He's already gone, probably watching from one of the countless hidden spaces he's learned about through our viewings. Maybe he's in the gardener's cottage, or the old servants' quarters, or one of the dozen other spots where someone could hide if they knew where to look. The worst part, he's still out there, learning the layouts of more luxury homes, finding new places to hide, new ways to trap people. I should have left it alone. That's what they tell you in training. Just deliver the mail, don't get involved. But after 15 years on the same route, you notice things. The way Mrs. Sullivan always waters her flowers at exactly 8:07. How the Rodriguez kids rush home from school to check their gaming magazine subscriptions. The steady stream of medical bills to the Peterson house since last March. I pride myself on knowing these patterns. It makes me good at my job. But sometimes, knowing too much can be dangerous. It started with 2847 Maple Street, Mr. Harrison's place, a quiet man who worked from home and only got the usual mix of junk mail and bills. Until 3 months ago. That's when the postcards started coming. They looked normal enough, tourist spots from different cities, but there was something off about them. No message, no return address, just a series of dots and dashes along the bottom, like someone's crude attempt at Morse code. I noticed similar cards going to other addresses on my route. Same style, same pattern. My curiosity got the better of me. I started logging them, keeping track. The frequency increased, more cards, more addresses. Then I saw one addressed to someone who'd moved away months ago. Emily Parker, sweet girl, used to bring me coffee on cold mornings. She disappeared without warning, left all her furniture behind. The police said there was no evidence of foul play, but that postcard, it had her new address printed in tiny numbers along the edge. My hands shook as I connected the dots. The postcards weren't random. They were tracking people, sharing information, building profiles of daily routines. Emily wasn't the only one. There were others, scattered across different routes, different cities. I dug deeper, started noticing patterns I'd missed before, like how Mrs. Thompson's mail suddenly included subscription boxes from 3 different meal delivery services. Too much food for one person, but her husband had moved for work 2 months ago. Or how the Wells family's teenage daughter got countless college brochures, except they were all postmarked after she'd already left for university. Everything looked normal on the surface. That's what made it so perfect. Who questions the mail? It's just paper and ink and stamps. Routine. Expected. I spent my off hours researching similar cases, missing persons reports that mentioned abandoned homes, unexpected moves, always with a trail of postcards leading up to their disappearance. Some detective in Nevada had almost connected the dots last year, until he retired suddenly, moved to Florida, according to his forwarding address. But his new address was printed in those same tiny numbers, on another postcard. I spent a week gathering evidence, photos, dates, addresses, created a whole map of connections. The broader picture was terrifying. Dozens of watchers, hundreds of targets, all connected through innocent-looking pieces of mail. I was going to report it. I really was, had the whole file ready. But then I got my own postcard. Grand Canyon at sunset, 3 dots and 2 dashes at the bottom, and a photo. Me walking my route, checking my notebook, writing down patterns. They knew I knew. Now I notice things I wish I didn't. The car that's parked just a little too long, the way my mail slot rattles at night, the shadows that move when they shouldn't, the sudden influx of credit card offers with tracking numbers that don't match any real services, my neighbor's subtle changes in behavior. How Miss Foster across the street started working from home last week always happens to be watering her plants when I leave for work, and the new dog walker who passes my house 3 times a day. Different dogs, same person, always checking their phone. I've requested a transfer, but the paperwork keeps getting lost. Resubmitted 4 times now. Each time it vanishes somewhere in the system, like it never existed. My supervisor gives me this sad look when I ask about it, like she knows something but can't or won't tell me. I found another postcard yesterday, hidden between my regular mail. A beautiful beach sunset in Miami. Looks peaceful, except for those dots and dashes. When I decoded them, my blood ran cold. It was a date next week. I've started sleeping in different rooms of my house, changed my routines, stopped talking to my friends, don't want them involved. Installed security cameras that somehow only record static. Every morning I put on my uniform, sort my mail, and walk my route, because that's what they expect, but I know they're watching, learning my patterns, just like I learned theirs. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent years being proud of how well I knew my customers' habits. Now my own habits might get me killed. And I keep wondering, when will they decide it's time to make me disappear too? Like Emily, like the others. Will they send someone who looks normal, a new neighbor, a delivery person? The spotlight burns differently when you're the one standing in it, when you're the one they're all watching. Hunting, I never wanted to be on that stage. I was comfortable in the shadows, directing, choreographing, creating. But now I understand why they say art imitates life. Or maybe it's the other way around. It started when Olivia disappeared. Our lead actress just vanished 3 weeks before opening night of my new show, Echo in the Dark, a psychological thriller about a woman being stalked by her own reflection. I had to step in, take her role. I wrote it, I knew every line, every movement. But something felt wrong from the first rehearsal, the way the other actors watched me, their eyes following my every move, like predators sizing up prey. The whispers that stopped when I entered a room, the strange messages left in my script margins, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Then Catherine went missing. She played the mysterious neighbor. We found her script in the dressing room, pages torn out, except for the scene where her character dies. A brutal murder scene I'd written in vivid detail. The police said there were no signs of foul play, just 2 actresses ghosting the production. It happens sometimes, they said, but I knew better. I started noticing things, small at first. A costume from Act 2 laid out on my kitchen table when I got home. My character's signature red scarf hanging from my bedroom mirror. The same mirror that seemed to catch reflections that weren't quite right, movements that didn't match my own. I changed my locks, installed cameras, set up motion sensors. Nothing showed up on the footage, but things kept appearing, props from the show, pages from the script, arranged in perfect recreations of scenes I'd written. Then the photos started coming, Polaroids recreating scenes from the show. Me cooking dinner, perfectly matching page 23, me sleeping, exactly like the dream sequence in Act 3. Me walking to my car, mirrors in the stalking scene from the climax, each photo more intrusive than the last, each one proving that someone was watching, always watching. The police didn't understand, couldn't see the pattern. But I did. I wrote this story. I knew how it was supposed to end. The detectives asked about enemies, rejected actors, disgruntled crew members. But they didn't understand. This was different. This was my story coming alive. Every scene, every detail, playing out exactly as I'd written it, down to the smallest gesture. The cast started getting nervous, dropping out one by one, each disappearance matching a death in the play. Until last night, when James disappeared, our male lead, the one who plays the reflection, the one who kills my character in the final scene. I found his phone in the theater, one video saved, footage of me, sleeping, walking, rehearsing, moments I didn't remember being filmed, and there, in the background of every shot, a figure, watching, always watching, just like in the play. I know what comes next. I've written this scene to tonight is opening night. The theater is sold out. In 2 hours, I'll step into that spotlight, become the character I created. In the script, she survives, escapes her reflection, but somehow, I don't think that's how this version ends. The stage door just opened. I can hear footsteps in the darkness, coming closer, but I can't see who it is, can't see their face. They're wearing a mask, my face, my reflection, moving closer. And I realize now I wrote this ending too. I just didn't know. I was writing my own story. The spotlight feels different when you're the one standing in it, when you're the one they're all watching, when you're the one they're hunting. The figure is closer now. I can see the knife gleaming in their hand. Just like in the script, just like I wrote it. The show must go on, they say, but I never thought I'd be the star of my own tragedy. I hear the audience filing in above, the overture starting, 5 minutes to curtain, and my reflection is reaching for me. The blade catches the light, just like I described in Act 4, Scene 3, page 72. Every detail perfect because they read my script, studied it, lived it, became it. I back away, but there's nowhere to go. The stage is behind me, the spotlight waiting. In 10 minutes, the curtain will rise, the audience will watch, as my story plays out one final time. But this time it's real. The mask is so perfect, every detail of my face captured in cold plastic. I wonder how long they studied me, how many nights they watched me sleep, how many times they followed me home just to get every detail right. The footsteps stop, the knife raises. And I realize the true horror isn't in the writing, it's in the watching, the waiting, the knowing that every word you wrote, every scene you created is coming true. And there's nothing you can do to change the ending because someone else is directing now. Someone else is choreographing this final scene. I never thought my work would make me a target. That's the thing about helping others. You don't expect it to put them in danger. My name is Dr. Alexandra Walsh. I'm a facial reconstruction surgeon specializing in helping domestic violence survivors reclaim their identities. The day I noticed the pattern started like any other morning at my private clinic in Boston. I was reviewing patient files when my nurse Rachel burst into my office. Her face was pale. "Dr. Walsh, you need to see this." She handed me her phone, open to a local news article. My stomach dropped as I read the headline. Another assault victim, the third this month. But this wasn't just any attack. The victim was my former patient. I recognized her immediately from the photo. Amanda Reeves. I had reconstructed her cheekbone and jaw 2 years ago after her ex-husband shattered them. The article described a brutal attack in her home. The attacker had specifically targeted her face. My hand started shaking. 2 weeks ago, it was Lisa Bloom. Before that, Nicole Winters. Both my patients, both attacked the same way. I pulled up my before and after patient photos on my secure server. My blood ran cold. The attacks were following my patient timeline in the exact order I had performed their surgeries. Someone was using my work as a roadmap. That night, I stayed late at the clinic digging through files. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I searched for any connection between the victims besides me. The security guard's footsteps echoed down the hallway during his rounds. Then, they stopped, right outside my door. I held my breath, the handle slowly turned. "Evening, a doctor." It wasn't our regular guard's voice. I reached for my phone, but before I could grab it, and the lights went out, I heard heavy footsteps entering the room. "Beautiful work you do, giving them new faces, new lives." The voice was closer now, "But they don't deserve it. They need to wear the faces they earned." My hand found the scalpel on my desk. I gripped it tight as I slid under my desk. The footsteps circled closer. "Did you think I wouldn't find them? Your little photo gallery showed me exactly who to look for." A drawer slammed open. "Where are the rest of the files, doctor?" I saw shoes appear on my left, then right. The beam of a flashlight swept the room. My heart pounded so hard I was sure he could hear it. Then, a crash from the hallway. The footsteps turned, rushed away. I didn't move for what felt like hours. When the police arrived, they found signs of forced entry at the back door, but the intruder was gone. We installed new security systems, hired armed guards. I warned all my past patients, some moved away, changed their names again. But I still practice, still help women reclaim their faces, their lives. Now, though, I keep no photos, no records that could become a hunting guide. But sometimes, when I'm working late, I still feel like someone is watching, waiting to unmake everything I've restored. The investigation continued for months. Detective Laura Bennett became a fixture at my clinic, reviewing security footage and interviewing staff. She discovered something disturbing. Someone had been accessing our external security cameras for weeks before the break-in, watching, learning our routines. The IT team traced the breach to a series of anonymous proxies, dead ends. Then the letters started arriving, Polaroid photos of my patients, their faces circled in red ink. Each envelope contained a single word, unworthy. The postmarks jumped between different states, making them impossible to trace. I started seeing connections everywhere. A car following me home, footsteps in the parking garage, shadows moving behind curtained windows. My sleep became fragmented, filled with dreams of faceless figures. I installed cameras in my apartment, changed my routes to work, varied my schedule, but the feeling of being watched never left. One morning, I found Rachel crying in the break room. Her sister had been attacked, beaten so severely her jaw was dislocated. "He said to tell you hello," Rachel whispered. "Said this is what happens when you help them hide." I closed the clinic that day, sent everyone home, called every patient on our current roster and canceled their surgeries. I sat in my office until sunset, staring at the wall of thank you cards from women I'd helped, women who trusted me to give them back their lives, their dignity. I couldn't let fear stop my work, couldn't let him win. The next day, I implemented new protocols. No digital records, no before and after photos, each patient file coded with random numbers instead of names. I moved the clinic to a new location, added biometric security, hired former military personnel as guards. Slowly, the attack stopped. The letters ceased. But the silence felt like holding your breath underwater, waiting for the moment you have to surface. I thought I was helping women stay safe. That's the bitter irony that keeps me up at night, knowing my mission to protect became a weapon. The whole thing started 3 years ago when I launched my Instagram account, Safe Solo Sister. After my own close calls backpacking through Europe, I wanted to create a community where women could share safety tips and look out for each other. I posted detailed guides about secure hostels, well-lit routes, and trusted local contacts. My following grew fast, too fast. That should have been my first warning sign. It was just another Thursday night. I was editing footage from my latest trip through rural Italy when the message appeared. "Have you seen this?" My colleague Anna had sent a link to a local news article. My stomach dropped as I read the headline. A tourist, young, female, solo, had vanished along the exact route I'd featured in my Naples guide last month. I might have dismissed it as coincidence, but then I noticed the comment, "Third one this year, same path." I frantically scrolled through my past posts. The pieces started falling into pieces. Prague, Barcelona, now Naples. In each city, a woman had disappeared within days of my detailed safety guides going live. The realization hit me like ice water. Someone was using my carefully crafted routes, the safe houses, the emergency contacts, the backup plans, to hunt. My hands shook as I pulled up my latest post, a live update from a remote village in Sicily. The footage showed the exact street I was on, the cafe I was sitting in, the hotel I'd be staying at. I grabbed my phone to delete it, but the signal was dead. A shadow fell across my table. "I've been following your work for a long time," a man's voice said. "Dan, your attention to detail is impressive." The cafe had emptied out. It was just us now. My breath caught as I noticed his phone open to my Instagram page. The images reflected in his dark glasses. Every step I'd taken, every safe route I'd planned, I'd created the perfect trap, and I was about to become my own latest victim. My self-defense training kicked in, the very techniques I'd taught my followers. I gripped my coffee mug tightly, the weight of it, the heat, a weapon hiding in plain sight. He leaned closer. "You know, the best part about your guides? The backup routes. Always so thorough." His smile made my skin crawl. Always a plan B. I saw my chance when the barista emerged from the back. In one fluid motion, just like I'd demonstrated in my videos, I hurled the scalding coffee at his face. His scream pierced the air as I bolted for the door. But he recovered fast, too fast. I could hear his footsteps behind me as I fanned through the narrow streets. Left, right, another right. I'd mapped these alleys meticulously for my followers. Now they felt like a maze closing in. My lungs burned as I ran, my camera equipment weighing me down. I knew I should drop it, but something made me hold on, keep recording, document everything. The sound of his pursuit grew closer. I ducked into a shadowy doorway, held my breath, watched him run past. Then I heard voices, tourists, a group of them, heading my way. Safety in numbers, another rule from my guides. I burst from my hiding spot and ran toward them. He couldn't risk attacking with witnesses. I was right. When I looked back, he'd vanished. The police found evidence in his apartment later. Maps, printed copies of my posts, detailed notes about the missing women. But they never found the bodies. That's what haunts me most. 3 lives, lost because of my well-meaning advice, my carefully planned routes, my trusted contacts who weren't trustworthy at all. The investigation revealed he'd been building his network for months, infiltrating the very safety systems I'd put in place, corrupting them from within. Some of the hostel owners I'd recommended, his associates, the safe taxi services, compromised. He'd used my own safety infrastructure to create a predator's paradise. I shut down Safe Solo Sister that same week, deleted every post, every guide, every well-intentioned tip that had been twisted into a trap. But the guilt remains, the knowledge that my mission to protect had enabled so much harm. I still travel sometimes, but differently now. No posts, no updates, no sharing routes or recommendations. The world hasn't become any safer for solo female travelers. But I've learned the hard way that sometimes the very systems we build to protect ourselves can become the bars of our own cage. Sometimes when I see young influencers posting their detailed itineraries online, mapping out their every move, I want to warn them, tell them my story, but would they listen? Would I have listened? Back when I thought I was helping, back when I believed that sharing was caring, back before I learned that in this digital age. The predators don't hide in dark alleys anymore. They hide behind screens, studying, learning, using our own safety measures against us. I never thought my research would make me part of the very history I was documenting. That's the thing about studying violence. You forget it's not just in the past. My name is Claire Mitchell, and I'm a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Modern History. When I started work on our newest exhibition, Silent Voices, A Century of Violence Against Women, I knew it would be challenging, but I didn't expect to become the next subject. It started with an unmarked envelope on my desk. Inside were 3 black and white photographs, artistically composed, almost beautiful, if you didn't look too closely at what they depicted. Crime scenes, but I'd never seen them before, and I'd spent months cataloging every documented case in the city's history. The composition was strange, contemporary objects mixed with vintage staging, like someone was recreating historical crimes. I dismissed it as a sick prank. That was my first mistake. 3 days later, I got the call. A woman had been found, posed exactly like the first photograph, down to the placement of her hands, crossed over her chest, the rose petals scattered around her body. The vintage dress she'd been dressed in after death. I couldn't breathe when I saw the crime scene photos. My hands shook as I pulled out that first anonymous submission. They were identical. The victim was Maria Delgado, a graduate student in art history. She'd attended one of my lectures just last week, sat in the front row, asked intelligent questions about the psychological profiles of historical killers. Now she was part of their legacy. The next envelope arrived before they'd even finished processing the crime scene. 2 more photos, the same artistic eye, the same mixing of eras, the same attention to historical detail. I called Detective Anna Mills immediately. We'd been working together since the exhibition project started. She'd helped me access the police archives, been fascinated by my research into pattern recognition across decades of crimes. Now those patterns were repeating, coming to life. She arrived within the hour, studied the photos with growing dread. "He's recreating the Wilson murders from 1952, she said quietly, but with modern victims. I knew the case well. 3 women killed over 6 days, each posed like a classical painting. The killer was never caught. The second victim was found exactly 48 hours later, Olivia Olivan, another academic, another attendee of my lectures. The pose was perfect, down to the angle of her head. The scattered pearls around her neck, the vintage gloves placed carefully on her hands. I stopped sleeping, started jumping at shadows, spent hours staring at the exhibition materials, trying to find the connection. What was I missing? Just security footage showed nothing, no witnesses, just the photographs appearing on my desk like clockwork. Perfect compositions of past and present horror. The third envelope held only 1 photo, My office, my desk, me, working late. The photo had been taken the night before. The rose petals were already scattered across my desk when I arrived that morning. The vintage dress laid out on my chair, a pearl necklace coiled beside it like a snake. I could barely dial Anna's number. My voice shook as I told her, he's chosen his final piece. We set the trap, used my research, my knowledge of historical patterns, against him. The exhibition hall became our stage, every detail perfect, just as he'd expect from me. I sat at my desk that night, heart pounding, wearing the vintage dress he'd left, the pearl necklace cold against my skin. Hours passed, then a footstep, the soft click of a camera shutter. Perfect, a voice whispered. You understand the artistry, the importance of precision. The flash blinded me for a moment. When my vision cleared, he was there. Dr. Philip Walsh, respected art historian, regular at my lectures, always asking about the aesthetic elements of historical crimes. The past deserves to be preserved, he said, raising his camera again. Recreated, perfected, and you'll be my masterpiece. The security team tackled him as he tried to stage his final scene, found his darkroom at home. Hundreds of photos, practice shots, failed attempts at recreation, the perfect blend of past and present horror. The exhibition opened last week. We added a new section, Modern Recreation, the Danger of Obsession. His photos are there, next to the historical crimes that inspired them. A reminder that the past isn't as distant as we think, that violence echoes through time, that some people study history not to learn from it, but to repeat it. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my office late at night, I still check for envelopes on my desk, still imagine the flash of a camera in the dark, still wonder, what if we'd gotten it wrong? What if he wasn't working alone? The roses arrived this morning, vintage, blood red, perfect recreations of the ones used in the Wilson murders. The card simply read, "For the collection,